Hello everyone. This video is set up to describe our second main project, which is taking a stance type of essay. And so I wanted to start off the video by just kind of going over some general guidelines for all essay writing. Doesn't necessarily mean only our class or our essay. This is just in general when you're asked to write an essay in college, some really important things to pay attention to or focus on. And then of course I'll kind of walk us through our essay as well and give you some advice, some guidance for getting started on this project. So first of all, when doing an essay, pay extremely close attention to the writing prompt question or questions. That is what your entire essay should focus on. So a lot of times a topic will be introduced to you, say food, water, gender. It can be something like one of our topics, technology, homelessness, fake news. Those are big topics. You don't just get to write about anything you want in relation to that topic. You actually have to narrow the focus to whatever the writing prompt question is asking for. And this is intentional because it is a type of skill or a strength of writers to be able to write within guidelines. Out sort of in the business world beyond college, you're going to have many different positions, opportunities where you have to do some sort of writing. Just to get a job, you're going to have to be able to put together a resume and a cover letter. There is very strict guidelines for what should be included in those and how they should be set up and how you want to stylize them. And if you don't follow those, you wouldn't get through to the interview process. So it's really important to learn to write within whatever the guidelines are given. So paying close attention to that writing prompt question, really essential to sort of creating a strong essay and staying within the guidelines of whatever the class is asking for. Again, regardless of whether that's English or some other class. Also, only include the number of sources or research that the essay asks for. Now, if it has a range, like if it says 2 to 4, then you could use 2, 3, or 4 sources, and that would be fine. But don't only use one, and don't exceed the number and say use 5. That's clearly outside of what the instructor is asking for. And also, like with our class, I specifically say, like, you have to use that article that you read in preparation for this essay. It has to be somewhere within the essay itself. So if you see any sort of specifics about using a particular text, article, it could even be something like a documentary or a movie that's been shown, make sure that you're including those in the essay. Of course, always pay very close attention to citation guidelines. If you ever have an instructor that does not tell you what type of citation to use, ask, don't just make an assumption. For our class, of course, we're using MLA. So you're going to want to make sure now with this essay, we're going to use all aspects of MLA. So up to this point, we've really just focused on the visual aspects of MLA. Now, particularly next week, we're going to really hone in on learning sort of all the other components, which is how to integrate sources, how to do in-text citation, and then how to put together the works cited page. So just paying attention to that citation, right? Don't assume you know everything about it. Approach it by assuming that you don't know how to do it correctly, because a lot of times in college we introduce things that you may not have heard of before. Next on the list, make sure that it's clear what ideas or information are your own and what ideas or information comes from sources. So again, if you put ideas and information into your own words that came from somewhere else, you still have to integrate it and cite it correctly. Quotations are pretty obvious, but that's not the only thing that needs cited in your work. Any information or ideas that come from somewhere else need to be clarified. That means you use things like according to, or in this article, whatever the author's name says, or claims or asserts, whatever it is that the author's doing. Make sure that you have that lead-in phrase, because that's how you separate sort of the they say from what you're saying, the I say. Also, something else that doesn't always get thought about, but we're writing to audiences, so make sure that you're aware of what the audience is that you've chosen. Keep that in mind the whole time. But also remember that they don't have the writing prompt. They don't know what you've been asked to do, so you need to provide enough context so that they don't get lost, which means that you need to introduce the general topic. I know I've had several questions about with our essay, well, do you spend a lot of time addressing why it's a problem? It depends on the specific prompt question. If the prompt question is asking you to describe why it's an issue or a problem, then yeah, you should. If it doesn't, then no. That doesn't mean that you ignore that. That just means that maybe you describe the problem as part of the introduction paragraph to lead into why you are discussing different solutions, or as a background, if you want to think of it as like background information on the topic, setting the scene, like you have to set up the direction that you're going. And this is always something to consider, again, for writing prompts that you're getting from any of your classes. And then finally, focus on one specific point per paragraph. So don't try and blend in ideas. If you have a new point, start a new paragraph. Strong college essays should not be 3-body paragraph essays. You have to, if you've been in the sort of mold of introduction, 3-body paragraphs, conclusion, let go of it. It's not going to work for this essay. You really have to separate and divide out the specific ideas. Each one should get their own paragraph. There is no set limit on how many paragraphs an essay should or shouldn't have. And the only time to deviate from that advice is, again, if you have a specific instructor that says they want it a particular way, well then yeah, do it whatever way that they're asking you to do. So I'm just going to quickly walk through our project directions and again just kind of highlight a few things of that I want to make sure you're aware of when you're pre-writing and when you're drafting this next week. So first of all, and I'm going to highlight a few things, you're going to read the prompts below. You're going to pick one of those writing prompts. Again, each one is tied back to one of the articles that you read, or whichever article that you read. So you're going to pick the writing prompt, and then underneath that, there'll be, I think most of them have 2 different audiences to pick from. You'll pick one audience to write to. You don't get to write to both of them. You do not get to write to general public. You really want to target into a specific group. And the reason for that is because you need to keep the values, beliefs, and concerns of your audience in mind while you write, because you're really targeting that group. So if you're trying to write to 2 different groups, well, 2 different groups have 2 different sets of values, beliefs, concerns. That's going to create a much more difficult, complex, larger essay than what I'm asking you to do for this project. This is a thesis-driven essay. What that means is that your thesis for the essay should ultimately answer the writing prompt question. So when we talked about, or when I mentioned earlier, that writing prompts are really, like, you have to pay close attention. Your whole essay should surround that writing prompt. The reason that you answer that prompt question as your thesis is because your thesis holds the whole essay together. So again, your thesis should be really, in essence, the answer to the writing prompt question, and that should guide the direction and the focus for the entire essay. That's also how you can keep on track and make sure that you don't sort of head off in a different direction or get off topic. You do have to use the article, so mentioned here, right, from the preparation activity. You get to use some other sources as well, so this is the first time we'll do a little research in this class. But again, this is not a research-heavy essay, so keep in mind that the essay needs to rely on and explore your own ideas in relation to the topic, so in relation to the prompt question, if you want to be more specific, and not just be a repeat of what a whole bunch of people think, all right? So you're not doing an informational essay where you're just reporting back what a whole bunch of research and sources say. Not at all. In fact, you'll use those sources sparingly and in really intentional ways to back up what you're saying in relation to the writing prompt. So I want to just take a look. I'm not going to go through all of the writing prompts. I just wanted to look at a couple of them. So you'll see that with each prompt, it starts by referencing the specific article. Want to make very clear which article the prompt is connected to. There's no reason to sort of have any confusion there, and there shouldn't be. They're pretty different topics, but just to make sure there's no doubt. So like with prompt 9, it says, in combating fake news in the digital age, Joanna Burkhart describes the evolution problems of fake news. She asserts that individuals need to be able to discern the difference between real and fake news. In college, students are taught how to identify credible information, but what about all the people who don't attend college? Why is it important for the average citizen to learn to distinguish between real and fake news? And how can they learn to be taught to do this? Okay. So the question just before this one is really a rhetorical question. It's actually asked more directly in the second part. So the highlighted section would be what you needed to focus on for this particular prompt. And then the audience, there's 2 different audiences. You could write to community leaders, or you could write to adults without college degrees. And again, those are two different groups. You're going to have to decide which one you think is the group that you would like to target, or that you think would have the most impact on this particular question, could do the most about it maybe. So if we go through, I'm not going to read all the prompts, the full thing, but I want to just kind of highlight the questions. So for the high school creativity one, I'm talking about including more technology. So it says, how might high schools include more technology, and how would that inclusion help students help engage students better? And then, of course, the two different audiences are listed below that. For the ending child homelessness prompt, it's how would Vasok's solution help to solve the problem? So you're going to describe how how her solution would address the issue. What would it do? What might it contribute to solving the problem? And then also what else might be done, because that alone is not going to just magically solve a huge issue like childhood homelessness. So that's going to also require that you come up with some of your own ideas about how to address that huge problem. For the next one, which is sort of the idea about diversity and cultural understanding, it's how effectively is the media contributing to cultural understanding? So do you think it's working? Do you think it's not working? Or in what ways is it working? In what ways is it not? And then what else could be done through media to help support diversity and inclusivity? So lots of different ways that you could address that, but again, make sure that those are the questions that it's focused on. And then, of course, prompt 5. So again, this is thinking about bullying in the workplace. It's how might companies work to eradicate workplace bullying and create more opportunities for employees to make positive connections with their colleagues. So you'll see that all of these different prompts, there's the sort of lead in, the prompt question, and then underneath is the audiences that you can pick from, and you'll pick one audience. All of these prompts have more of a focus on the solution aspect, because the problem itself, it's pretty recognized that these are different problems within our society. And so they're really solution-focused essays, and that's what you're taking a stance on. You're taking a stance on the solutions, not on whether it's a problem or not. We all kind of recognize that this is a problem, or at least the audiences that you're writing to recognize it's a problem. As always, pay close attention to minimum requirements. You'll see that I highlighted a few even on the directions, but already just 5 to 6 full pages in length. That means when you're writing for English 101, you want to go all the way to the bottom of that fifth page, probably a couple lines onto the 6th to be safe. Always a good idea to head for the higher inside of a range, not the lower. Same thing if you're writing the English 98 level. 3 full pages, I would suggest to go at least several lines onto the 4th for safety. You want it to be very clear that you've met that requirement. And of course, this does not include your Works Cited page. That's like an added extra page on top of the ranges that we're given. Audience awareness we're going to be working on. We'll have an activity that we do surrounding audience awareness, I believe. I think I have it set up for next week. Of course, that clearly addressed from prompt, the different parts of Emily format already mentioned. You need to include paraphrases or quotes from the article that I signed as support. There will be a video next week talking about integrating sources that'll give you some ideas, and of course I can always help you if you're not sure how to use your article. You can't use more than 4 socials total. So if you want to use just the one that I assign, okay, that's fine. A stronger essay is probably going to have more than one, but don't go beyond that 4 mark, all right? 4 is plenty for this length of an essay. If you're using more than 4, they're either not very strong sources, or your essay is going to be too heavily focused on what other people are saying, and again, not enough on your own ideas. And then, of course, no plagiarism, all right? So my hints, again, around 25% of your essay could be source material. Try to stick within that. And then again, that 1 main point per body paragraph. It's really important to pay close attention to that, because it leads to confusion and organization issues otherwise. So I'm not going to go through the grading writing process due dates. Those are all pretty evident at this point. If you have any questions about those, please ask. Don't hesitate. But I just want to take a few minutes and kind of walk you through this project. Hopefully that it helps clarify how these things all fit together. And with this particular essay, there's going to be several more tasks attached to it than we did with the first one. So there's going to be an assignment about checking your MLA. There's going to be a self-review that you'll do with this one. And then I also glance through these rough drafts and just sort of send individual messages to students if I'm worried about plagiarism or if I see any sort of major concerns when the rough drafts come through. And of course, I'm happy to help out with anything that you have questions on. If you get stuck, if you're not sure how to cite something, if you're not sure if you're addressing the writing prompt, whatever it is, please do not hesitate to reach out to me for additional help. So good luck, and I really look forward to seeing your rough drafts and what all you guys come up with for this essay.